To start, I have to read this out. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being videoed. Members of the public are entitled to record the proceedings and are requested to give prior notice so that any additional measures that may assist can be put into place. Any member of the public who has any concerns should raise them now. Right. Item 1 is apologies for absence, and I think we've got a pretty well full house. Item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. Nobody seems to be shouting. Item 3, minutes. The minutes are included. Is everyone happy with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'll sign them afterwards. It's a true record. Item 4, public question time. No public questions. Item 5, member questions. No. Item 6, scrutiny. Items call-in. I think Claire Wild.
Chairman, I've got a point of order.
Okay.
I maintain that the call-in or meeting of the Place Overview Committee and the call-in has not been correctly handled. And I formally ask that it be correctly handled as per the station, the Shropshire Council Constitution, and it be formally heard correctly as laid out, and it should be within the Constitution.
I was going to say, I was actually at that meeting, Peter, and because the whole of the committee agreed with the recommendations, Graham White advised us that actually, yeah.
Let's have the legal deal on it.
Councillor Evans has raised a few issues in his opinion with regard to the Constitution. I have advised now twice that the meeting was correctly held. The decision stands. Maybe we can deal with the points that Councillor Evans has raised outside the meeting, but they're not relevant for this matter now.
Chairman, can I just ask that my comments be noted?
Yeah,
It is incorrect. The places should not have heard it. It should have gone to the performance scrutiny.
I'm not going to argue with the legal advice here,
okay.
so we'll go forward and deal with it outside the room. Right, so, Claire.
Yes. Thank you very much. We have a task and finish group looking at the fundamental strategy, of which there are 4 pillars: innovation, raising income, cutting services, and use reserves. We met on 3 days, the 11th of January, 15th of January, and the 18th of January. There is a report attached, but I would say a few words. Of the £59 million gap, 42 million has been identified, 21 million from innovation, 17 million from reserves, and £5 million worth of cuts. Looking forward, more innovation and income generation will be needed to fill the gap in funding. There are standing items on the agenda, with the asset review out shortly and innovation schemes linked to adult social care and children's services on the horizon. Whilst concerns were raised at the meeting about the length of time it's taking to bring these schemes forward, given that they will benefit the most vulnerable in our communities, it is right and proper that due diligence dictates the time frame for these. And I'm happy to take any questions that might arise. Thank you.
If I can ask, and I might be that I should know the answers and I don't, it talks about a task and finish group. So will that be established by your scrutiny panel?
Yes. One of the other criticisms was that, of course, we had to do this in quite a tight time frame, and there wasn't much wiggle room within the work we were doing. However, it was agreed at the meeting that actually getting a very good understanding of what was going on was very helpful. So moving forward, we're going to have a standing task and finish group to actually look at some of these items before they happen and as they are happening, so that we can give, hopefully, more beneficial input into the decision making.
And that will be handled by your scrutiny
Yes,
panel?
it will.
Okay. Right, any comments? There are some recommendations on page 1. Everyone happy with those? I'm quite happy to move them. Yeah. Oh, sorry, David Turner.
Just one question from here, if I may. Can we please ask that in this task and finish group we get portfolio holders present, please, so we can answer some questions?
Yeah. I think sometimes with the portfolio holders, we're more than willing to come to any meeting. We just need to be asked sometimes because we never know if we're being asked or not at various meetings.
I was there at that particular meeting.
But anyway, yeah, but it's not a problem. Yeah.
Can I just say to Peter, in fairness, there was only 2 portfolio holders that didn't come. And I'd like to thank the portfolio holders that did come. Steve was there, I think, twice, so they all, you know, and we did send out invitations. Thank you.
Okay, so there's recommendations A, B, C. Everyone happy with those? Okay, thank you. Those are agreed. Back to the agenda, which is item 7, financial monitoring report, quarter 3.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm not going to say too much on this. Members will note that the situation now, or the outlook now, is considerably better than it was last time we looked at this some 3 months ago. We do appear now to be heading for round about a break even. I think the forecast is a modest underspend, but anything can happen between now and then. But at least we're no longer looking at the millions of pounds gap that we were back in the as ever, Chair, if there are any questions, either myself or James or the individual portfolio holders will attempt to deal with them. But I'll move the recommendations contained in the report.
And I'm happy to second on the project.
Thank you, Chairman. Got a few questions. I'll ask some of them, but there are others as well. I noticed the report and I noticed the change around, but I noticed on page 6 the changes that there are in the table that's there: adult services, children's services. Some of them have gone up, some of them have gone down. Not really followed through elsewhere. I noticed that on page 15, which is the adult social care one, that the budget figure for the social care operations and the budget figure for the contract and provider has altered by over £900,000 between the quarter 2 report and the quarter 3 report. The total for adult social care, 92,100,000, is the same, but there's been almost nearly £1 million difference in the budgets in that, and there's no reference in it about why that has occurred. Over £1 million, it would have to go to council, I would have thought, but between 500,000 and £1 million, I thought it had to come to cabinet for any budget alterations over that figure. I may be wrong, but there's, as I say, 937 million, which is just below the 937,000, sorry, which is just below the £1 million difference.
But it's an underspend, not an overspend.
No, the budget, not the forecast or the variance. If one looks at the budget figure on page 15,
Yeah.
contracts and provider, £6.2 million is the budget figure.
Yeah.
In quarter 2 report, it was 5.28 million. If you look at the social care operations, which is 75.494 million, in the quarter 2 budget report, it was 76.43 million. Nearly £1 million difference in the allocated budget for that service in this paper. And I haven't seen anything which shows that sort of difference, movement of the budget between those 2 areas.
James, any other?
Well spotted, Councillor. That is a correct adjustment. I haven't got the answer as to why that has changed. I'll have a look in it. As you say, it is contained within the overall adult social care budget total. So it's been a shift within those areas. Whether that gets picked up by the environment rules, I'd have to look to see whether it's an actual change in policy of spend as opposed to within the existing. But I'll go back and confirm that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and as I said, but if I go to page 17, and it is a comment there, and I would ask the cabinet member, director to have a look at it, but on page 17, right near the bottom there's a comment, an early help family hubs report was approved by cabinet on the 17th of January, proposing to consult formally with the public. I have a complaint from a member of my group who attended one of these, but only knew it was taking place because the library staff in her area told her about it. And one of the people there, one of the officers there said, oh, nobody's been turning up for these from members of the public. No member of the public were invited to this. And I am concerned that that consultation is being carried out and it is not being publicised.
I've got to say, Leader, I'm very surprised. There's been a great deal of publicity, obviously on the council's website, but directly to the media for the dates and times of the meetings. I myself went on BBC Shropshire Radio to publicise the consultation exercise. There were a lot of meetings, there are a lot of meetings in a lot of different places. Maybe not everybody looks carefully at the schedule, but they were extremely well publicised.
All I can say is that an officer told a member of my group they have been very poorly attended, and that person was surprised how well attended this one was. And the comment has been made to me, well, it was publicised in the local library, and there were a number of parents there who were concerned at what was being said. What if that can be taken away and acted on?
I have to say though, on things like that, if you are concerned about the lack of publicity about anything, if you tell us before a cabinet meeting, at the time it's raised, we can then do something about it. If you wait till now, it sometimes isn't.
Yeah, I only learned about it yesterday. So, yeah. On page 20, environmental maintenance, reference about a £1 million overspending Q1 using money from elsewhere. Highways and transport, I notice on there, as a 20% overspend in this. It's marked red. In the financial strategy we're looking at later, highways and transport are expected to make a saving next year. Is that practical, showing what is there? Yes, I've got one or two other comments, but maybe separately I can do it.
It's going to have to happen, whatever.
Yeah. But as I say, it's there, and I don't know why the reason for, and I will be asking questions elsewhere as to why that has happened.
Anything else?
Leader, can I just ask that any member who is alluding to a particular page and paragraph, that they announce it when they're going through. There's 2 page 21s, 2 page 15s, etc., etc. So we're shuffling through the papers, not knowing what anyone's talking about, and we have to work out the paragraph ourselves as we're going along. So it would be more clear to us, especially sitting at the rear, as to what's going on.
Okay, right. Anybody else wish to comment? No? Right, there are recommendations on page 8 in the middle of the bottom of the page, or page 2 on the right hand side, about this report, and considering the criticism there was a couple of meetings ago when it looked like there was going to be an overspend and now we're in an underspend situation, I think we've done extremely well. So, we are working hard on trying to get the budget under control. Right, so the recommendations, is everyone happy with those? Are they all agreed? Yeah. Right, thank you. Item 8 is the financial strategy, which is my report. There's pages of it, and I'm sure you've all read them, but basically it is showing that we are getting to a situation where we are getting the budget under control, and we look like we're okay for the next 3 years, or this year and the next 2 years. It's still a little bit of an issue after that because we don't know what the spending review on local government will come up with. And the way local government is, if you can do 2 or 3 years in front, you're doing pretty well at the moment. So I think we're in a pretty good position. Not ideal. We'd love the government to give us another 20 or 30 million pounds a year, which we do believe we deserve, and we will keep telling them such. But generally, our position is getting better. It's on the separate report. The recommendations are on page 6 in the middle, or little 2 on the right-hand side, and it's basically just agreeing the budget as we go forward.
Can I ask a question on this?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. We know we've got 5 million to take out of per annum on transport and highways, but I was, it's only since I've looking through this document, the word permanent is in here, when I believe it to be temporary. So can I have an explanation of that, please?
How are you?
Yeah.
I'll have to go first to Councillor Davenport. It's around accounting convention and the need to show a balanced budget and demonstrate to our auditors who met with Cabinet around about June, July, you might recall the meeting at Granger and Worrell, where they've made it clear to the Council that we need to show permanent savings. So this is shown as a permanent saving, giving our auditors reassurance. But the full intention is, as set out in the financial strategy, is to reverse those permanent savings when we have the money and income in the budget. So that's the reason. It demonstrates to our auditors that we are making permanent savings as they have requested and required assurance over.
Just as a layman, permanent doesn't sound temporary.
So to answer that equally, what we could do is make it temporary. We won't give our auditors the assurance. And then if we find ourselves in circumstances where other income streams haven't happened or are not happening soon enough, or savings we've projected are not happening soon enough, or other things with government grants, because they're never ever a certain situation. If all that changes and we find that we can't therefore stop with the temporary savings will then become temporary again into the future. So the position in the budget will be wherever it is in 2 years' time. Given everything happening as we've set it out, then the intention is that those permanent savings will be reversed, and it does say so in the financial strategy. So you could describe it either way. They're either temporary, but they'll be temporary forever if needed, or they're permanent and you'll reverse them out when you've got the money. It amounts to the same thing.
And I have been having a conversation with Clive about it's 5050 in the report, and whether we can smooth those figures out as we go forward, and we are looking at ways that we may or may not be able to do that. Are you happy with the Chief Executive's explanation? Right. Anybody else? Right. Okay. Well, the recommendations, I say, we're on page 6. I think they're pretty straightforward. Everyone, yeah, right. Everyone agreed with those? Okay. Thank you. Item 9, robustness of estimates and adequacy of reserves. That's Councillor Minnery again. We're working hard today.
Indeed. But, I'll not say too much, so that like always just sit intact and wait for questions. But basically, this is one of the many technical papers that we do have before us today, Leader, which is it's a statutory requirement that the Section 151 officer has to report on his opinion of the steps, the measures that we're taking, the financial strategy that we've just approved, and the reserves that we're planning to have at various points going into the future. So this is his report in wearing that particular hat to say that this is where we are. As ever, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. There are 3 recommendations on the front of the report, and I move those.
Okay, I'm happy to second them. Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Chairman. I note that the projected recommended level of general reserves for the following 4 years is £18 million for next year, rising to £40 million in 2022-23. This, I presume, again, is to satisfy the auditors, to show them that we are there. I wait to see how this increase in the reserves is going to be managed. I also note on page 3 of the report, section 4, 4.3, and the bullet point there, a reference about redundancies. Can I be told how many enforced redundancies have been and will have been implemented by the end of March, please? There are other comments on it, but those are the two main ones. I will be grateful for the information.
March of this year, you mean?
Sorry?
March 2018.
March 2018.
Yeah.
So Steve Charles portfolio holder, and they're not enforced redundancies as we speak. We're out for voluntary redundancy, and we're aiming, in order to make savings in advance of the new financial year, for 20 also voluntary redundancies. And we think we'll achieve that.
I was approached by an employee of this organisation within the last 10 days and told that that person was having enforced redundancy on that person toward about the third week in March. That person was not given a choice as taking it into the next financial year. That person was told, you will be made redundant in the third week in March.
Yeah, accepted that there's a general need for redundancies that we're bringing forward, but there will be structural changes in and across teams in the ordinary course of business, as there always is in the organisation, and some of this will be enforced redundancies. But the general approach, though, Roger, as you know, is to look for voluntary redundancies.
I understand that.
Where we can't do that, then we won't bring them forward. It's also, so I give a complete answer, there may be people who volunteer for redundancy, but we're not able to accept those redundancies because we need those job roles in the business.
The person concerned has not volunteered to be redundant. The person concerned was told, you will be redundant. And that's why I asked the question, how many, for whatever reason, reorganisation, restructuring, or whatever like that, how many enforced redundancies will this organisation be making by the end of March this financial year?
So I've given an answer so far about the overall approach. Our preference would be for voluntary redundancies when we can enable that. We do have to protect the needs of the business, and I've explained that as well. There will be a need for compulsory redundancies, but we won't know where that sits until we've been through that process. Outside of the meeting, I can identify with you where we already know about compulsory redundancies, and when we get through the voluntary process and we see where we are and against where we need to be, we can then look again to see if there will be any compulsory redundancies. I hope that we'll be minimising those, as we have done over the past 5 years, as much as we possibly can.
Last comment, Chairman, is that you're on record to say there were going to be no enforced redundancies. It was going to be taken by voluntarily, although there may need to be enforced redundancies if the reduction in staff cannot be maintained.
And when I made that comment, I was commenting in terms of the digital revolution that's taken place within the council. There have been previous decisions made over the last few months about various services that may result in compulsory redundancies, which are a separate issue. But in terms of the discussion at the moment, it is, we think we're going to cope with it on a voluntary basis.
So, again, sorry, the last comment is, so there are some enforced redundancies taking place at this moment?
They could be in this organisation, but they're not as a result of the present decisions. They're decisions that have been made in the past. Okay, so where were we? So robustness of the estimates, we've got the recommendations that have been moved and seconded. Any other comments?
Do you want to answer first?
Well, yes, you want to try, yeah.
Just in relation to Councillor's first question around the growth in the calculations through to the later years, grown to £40 million by 2022. I think the question was how do we intend to fulfil that level of reserves? The answer is that we don't. This is a risk-based assessment which is based on the current financial strategy, and in those later years there is currently a funding gap which has not been solved, and there's also a high degree of uncertainty around things like government funding and savings proposals that are built into those later years. So therefore the assessment comes out to say, based on the plan as it stands at the moment, you would need reserves of around about 30 to 40 million in those later years. The reality is that that's 4 to 5 years' time. Before that date, we will have put the savings plans in place. We will know what fair funding looks like in relation to government funding, and therefore we would hope that we would be bringing that figure down to a level which is more in line with the level of reserves that we have at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. I note that, but I also noted in the auditor's report, which was considered by Council a few months ago, the auditors expressed concern at whether the Council could achieve the savings that it was estimated as making. The savings this current year we are in now, it was envisaged that they were no challenging savings were there. So therefore, our general fund was reduced in order to meet that. Actually, 17% of the savings have not been made for this year, and it is estimated they will not be made this year. 17% of savings is a very high figure.
I'd be interested to know what you'd like us to actually cut then.
Well, in the financial strategy for this
No,
current year...
you tell me where that 70% is and which services you would have cut that we haven't.
I am making comments on the reports on the table today, Chairman.
So you don't really know?
I have not got the access. I have not spent the days and days that the Cabinet have had with officers. I do not have that sort of access for it. Others around this table do. As an opposition member, I do not. And I would be grateful to do it, and then I would come up with ways of doing it. But at the moment, the information is not made available to members of the opposition. And in fact, members of my group are wondering what we're going to do about scrutiny in the future when task is finished. But that's in another arena, because I've raised several points and they have raised several points and they have been ignored. A good place was last Monday, when the members' questions were treated exactly like members of the public, which is totally against the way the Constitution is phrased.
Right. So, which one are we on? We're on page 57, the recommendations there, I believe, aren't we? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so are they all agreed? Right, thank you. So we go on to item 10. It's confusing when there's all these different financial reports. Item 10, fees and charges.
Yes, Chair. Yes. Again, I'm not going to say too much. There is a very extensive series of pages that show the proposed increases for the charges that we are both able to set ourselves and those which are set for us. They're laid out there in detail again if there are any questions, but I'll just move the recommendations, Chair, which there are a series of them, 2.1 through to 2.4. 2.4 is in 4 parts. I would draw attention to 2.4 little 1 and little 2, which it is a little bit of welcome good news, I'm sure. It may be a small reduction, but there is a 1% reduction in rents applicable from April as a result of a government decision sometime last year. I move the recommendations.
And they're on page 76, the big 76 in the middle. Any comments? I'm quite happy to second the report. No? Right. I'm assuming then everybody's happy. Right, we'll move on. Item 11, estimated collection fund outturn. Councillor Minnery.
Yes, this is the annual report, Chair, on the success or otherwise in the collection of the council tax and the business rates. You'll see from the summary that one, we achieved more revenue than we anticipated, and the other one, we received less. The deficit is mainly caused by evaluations, and if you want more information, James will provide it, but it's a long story as to how this impacts upon us. But basically, in making a forward judgment, we have to rely on what's happened in the past in terms of the number of appeals against values and how successful they've been, and we form a view as to what position is likely to be the following year. But because of the overall evaluations, there's been a little bit of turmoil, and it's ended up with far more people winning their appeals than anticipated, which has produced this this deficit on the business rate. But of course, we only stand part of that. There was a surplus on the council tax one, so the overall position is £130,000 short of where we expected to be. So it's not really a disaster, but I move the recommendations, Chair.
Which I'm happy to second. Budget.
A fairly quick one, Chairman. I note the £130,000 deficit in it overall. Usually it's in positive areas, and we can usually use that to help the funding of the council. Did we take too much money out last year?
Out of where? I don't understand the question.
In previous years, when it's been in surplus, we've taken money out.
No,
and added
you've
to
had the
it.
explanation why we're where we are this year. It's all to do with business rates. It's not to do with council tax.
In the rate collection, and in previous years, there was a reference, for example, about NHS properties and whether they would succeed in abuse. And there's a reference to it, and we put money aside for when and if that occurred. What I'm asking is that last year, when we did it, we took money, the surplus out, and added it to our funds for this council. Did we take too much out last year so that this year there is no carry forward figure as it has been in previous years?
No. What we do every year is assess the level, the collection rate level, and assumptions around what in business rates what the appeals and provisions level needs to be. We made an assessment of what that would look like in the last financial year, and then what happens as a result of that, the surplus or the deficit flows out of the collection funds. We don't take the money out in that sense. We make an assessment of what the position will be, and then what happens at the end of the year, and then we review the following year on the basis of that. The complication, as Councillor Minery pointed out this year, is that the 2017 valuation has changed some of those. It's changed the whole environment in relation to business rates. So our overall business rate take is up, but the number of appeals that apply to that, therefore, partly therefore, have gone up. So we've had to put a higher provision in. Whether that provision is right or not, we won't know until we get to, well, we won't know for 5 years, 10 years, when all of the appeals flow through. All we can ever do is make an estimate based on the best information that we have. But it's not about taking money out or putting money into the collection fund. It's purely about assessing that risk.
Right, so I'm looking at the recommendations on page 47. Everyone happy with those? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 12, Treasury Strategy, 2018-2019. Councillor Minery.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, an annual favourite, I think, sets out as it says, the strategy for investing and borrowing over the next 12 months. Series of recommendations, which is split into 3 groups, really. But the recommendations for us as Cabinet are found on page 54 of the pack, or 2 of the report. Paragraph 2.1, they run from A through to G, and I'm happy to move those.
Do we need to move the others?
The others are...
No, you're happy with just move. Right, okay. Right, so I'll second those. So it's A to G on page 54 to 55. Nobody seems to want to talk, so we'll accept that those are agreed. Item 13, Treasury Management Update. Councillor Minery.
Yes, I'll move it when I find it.
Page 103.
What page number is it?
103.
103. Oh, yes, not there yet. Bear with me. 103, Treasury Management Update. Well, again, this is the quarterly report rather than the annual strategy. It tells us what we've actually done during the third quarter. And I have to say, Leader, that as much as I'm grateful to the team for getting what they do, the interest rates are abysmal. We get a return of 0.44%. Although it's outperformed by 0.16%, it's still derisory, which, apart from anything else, surely emphasises the need for the decision that we took last year about the investments. Anyway, I move the recommendation, which is that the report be noted. Thank you.
I'll second that. Any comments? No? Right. I think that's agreed then. Right. Item 14, business rates revaluation discretionary relief scheme.
Yes, Chair. This is an update. This is the additional money that you remember we agreed a formula for distributing this amongst the small businesses last year. So this is the report to say what's happened in the current year, in which we managed to expend the money, although for a very, very small amount, a matter of just a few thousand, and where we set out the scheme for next year, because the scheme is continuing, but the amount available from government is reduced by 50%. So instead of around about 1.3 million, it's now 630,000, 680,000, something of that order. And then to save having to come back, the report then goes on to address the remaining 2 years, because it is a 4-year programme of support from government. So it is basically the same scheme, it's just that the amounts that we have got to distribute are obviously decreasing as we go forward. But it's fairly straightforward, I would hope, not controversial. We all want these people to get the money back wherever possible. So I'm happy to do the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Happy to second. It's on page 123,
Sorry, yes,
going over the
going
page,
over the page, yeah.
to 124. Right. Okay, that seems to be agreed. Item 15, revocation of air quality management areas. Councillor Macy.
We've missed two lots of recommendations.
Thank you. You may remember earlier in the year there was another similar report came to Cabinet, and this is in relation to our duties regarding air quality management areas, and they are put in place where it's likely that air quality levels and certain pollutants may be above specified levels, and we're required to designate those areas and prepare an air quality action plan. What I'm happy to say today is there are 2 more areas that have been in existence since 2003, based in Heathgates and Shrewsbury, and based on the latest monitoring that we did, we're happy that the levels are not going to increase above the thresholds in the future, therefore we're proposing to revoke it's in that area. It will leave us with just 2 remaining in Shrewsbury in Shropshire now, the first in Bridgnorth and the other in Shrewsbury Town Centre. But I think this just shows it's a good step towards improving air quality in the county. So I move the recommendations contained in the report.
It's a good news story. Yeah. Right. And nobody seems to wish to comment, so I'm very happy to second the report, and I hope the press will pick up on the fact that it is a good news story. Right.
Well, just on that, Chair. Not that I want to put a damper on it. I wonder what has been what contribution Shropshire Council's activities have paid to that good news story, because looking at the report, it's mainly due to changes in the emission of more modern vehicles rather than anything that we've actually done. Or am I wrong?
Well, we do that as a council. We've got better vehicles.
Well, we might have a lot of better vehicles, but in terms of their impact on the overall environment compared to normal traffic and flows, it's relatively negative.
It's all good. Right. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Item 16, determination of admission arrangements 2019-2020. So, this, not 1920, that's a long way away, yeah?
Chairman.
It's not 1819, is it?
No, it's 1920.
Oh, well, yeah, so it's not this year, it'll be a year in September time.
Last year, it was brought to the council's attention that there were some misalignments between some boundaries for primary schools and the secondary schools linked to those primary schools. There are 7 changes proposed to catchment areas. I'm sure members will have seen the maps that go with the report, and it's probably a lot easier to look at the maps than some of the wording. There were comments made in some instances. All these issues were very thoroughly discussed at the local admissions forum at the end of last month, and the changes now proposed are supported by the local admissions forum. I'm happy to move the recommendations, which is to adopt those changes in catchment areas. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 of the report.
Nobody looks like they want to comment, so I assume the report is agreed. Okay, thank you all very much. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.